Hi, everybody. We're talking about day 7 now. This is Saturday, day after the crucifixion. Jesus has been laid in the tomb, and they're in the middle of the Sabbath. There's actually only a little bit of scripture that talks about what happens on this day. It's in the book of Matthew, starting in chapter 27, starting in verse 62. And it reads, "The next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. 'Sir,' they said, 'we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, after 3 days I will rise again. So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first.' 'Take a guard,' Pilate answered. 'Go make the tomb as secure as you know how.' So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard." It's interesting. It doesn't seem like the apostles really knew Jesus was going to be raised from the dead. They had heard all of his teachings on it. He had been very specific with them the last few months. He said it over and over again. The Pharisees and the leaders seemed like they got it. They understood. They said, we need to seal this thing up. We need to put a guard on it. We don't want anybody thinking that they can come in, take his body, and then claim that Jesus has been raised from the dead. That would just be crazy. And so they know it. And so Pilate says, okay, go do it. Put a seal on the stone, and then post a guard there, which is exactly what they went and did. I think it's interesting that the high priest and the Pharisees and whatnot, they wanted to seal Jesus into that tomb. They wanted to make sure he did not come out. The apostles, on the other hand, went back to their house or wherever they were staying and locked themselves in their room. I'm kind of in our house right now, rather than being outside today, for the reason that the apostles were inside. Now, the book of Luke actually says that after the women went to the tomb to see where they were going to lay Jesus, they then went home and observed the Sabbath, and they rested on the Sabbath as they were commanded to. But the apostles, I think they were probably resting as they were commanded to, but somehow or another, I don't think it was very much resting. I think they were very anxious and very concerned about what was going to happen to them. Very much like what's going on with us today. We're all quarantined in our houses. We don't get out much. We don't get to use our mask. We have to use our mask. We can't go to restaurants. We can't go to stores other than grocery stores and stores that have essential needs for life. Many of our businesses are closed down. This is a time of very, very high anxiety. We just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. See, the leaders thought they knew what was going to happen tomorrow. They thought that the disciples were going to come take Jesus's bodies, what they thought was going to happen. The disciples knew they weren't going to go take the body. That wasn't part of their plan. They didn't understand that it was Jesus's plan. Remember the 2 guys on the road to Emmaus that are talking about all the things went on, and Jesus comes up along beside them and they don't recognize him. And he says, "What are you talking about?" And they basically said, "Have you not heard anything that's gone on this weekend? You don't know about Jesus and the fact that he's been crucified?" And Jesus says, "No, I didn't know about that." And then he starts to explain to them from Scripture how it was expected that the Christ would be killed and he would then rise. They had no idea. No idea. And these were strong disciples. They're strong enough disciples that once they found out Jesus really had risen from the dead, that they decided they needed to go back to tell the apostles and make sure they knew. You see, these guys had left and gone home. They were on their way home to be inside, just like we are right now, because they didn't know what was going to happen. So they're trying to figure out, do I go back and hide? Do I go back and restart my old job? What exactly am I supposed to do? Isn't that the question that we face today? Not just the COVID, not just because of this pandemic that's going on right now, but each and every day of our lives. What exactly am I supposed to do? And most of the time, we're trying to figure out what the thing is that we're supposed to do, some particular act of righteousness, some particular form of assembly and worship and whatever. And we argue about that. Churches argue back and forth about that. But the reality is, the same thing that they should have been doing, because if they had been paying attention to what Jesus said, and if the high priest understood that there's something about this third day, they would have been looking forward to the resurrection. And we know what we have to look forward to is that very same resurrection. We know that Jesus was raised from the dead, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow morning. But for right now, it's Saturday. We're between the crucifixion and the resurrection. And what we have is hope for tomorrow. That because Jesus will rise from the dead, and for us, because Jesus did rise from the dead, that we have hope not only for this, not only to get past COVID, not only to deal with the day in and day out of our lives, but we have a hope for eternity. I hope you guys have a great Saturday. I look forward to a great remote Easter Sunday tomorrow. God bless you. Bye-bye.